Wow. Well, hello, everybody. First of all, I just want to say that it is such an honor and a huge thrill to be part of the final round of the Cleveland Piano Competition. This has been a dream of mine since I was really young, and I know that's a very cliche thing to say, but it's really God-honest truth. I could not be more excited to play with the Cleveland Orchestra in a few days. And this has really been, it has been my dream ever since I was young to play with a major orchestra, and especially a fantastic concerto like the Brahms Second Concerto. So this is really living out my fantasies. And speaking of youth, I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, and I've been thinking that life was a lot simpler when I was younger. Now, there's a lot of reasons for this, but the main reason that I put together is that I felt like I could get my way out of a lot of situations. I could really sweet talk my way around things. And I mean, for example, like when my parents, they almost never got into fights with each other. But when the time would come when they would have an argument, I could not stand to see that happening. So I would intervene, and I would cause so much attention and just act like a rotten child. And it would be a diversion. And then they would join forces to take down the common enemy, which became me. And you know, it was fantastic because it worked, and everything was solved, and they were all good together. So you know, I sweet-talked my way out of that. When my first year of college, I had this absolute dream of competing on this reality TV show, Hell's Kitchen, which is it's probably my favorite cooking show of all time. Now, I don't know the first thing about cooking, but I would try to create all of these fake food accounts to fool the judges into thinking that I should qualify for this show. And long story short, my parents found out, weren't too amused, and shut it all off. But if there was one thing that I couldn't sweet-talk my way around when I was younger, it was love. And this was something that I could not figure out. I'm somebody who's an incredibly passionate and deeply romantic person, but I just could not figure out how to keep a relationship going on. And I decided that, you know, since now I'm older and I'm more mature and a little bit wiser, I thought maybe this would be a good opportunity to share my foolproof plan of how you overcome love and be one with yourself. So for this, every single piece in this program is going to have something to do with love, heartbreak, and the eventual joining forces with yourself and becoming one with the universe. So to start off, I'm going to begin the program with my first stage, which is the fake confidence portion. And I'm going to go guns blazing. This is myself before a relationship, and I'm all pumped up. I'm excited to get in the middle of it. And the piece is my own arrangement of Shostakovich's Jazz Suite, the second waltz from his Jazz Suite, which I think starts with the most I don't want to use the word sensual, but beautiful saxophone solo. So now that the bravura has established itself, I can move on to phase number 2, which is, I think, probably the most important part, and that is finding someone that you really feel that very special, deep connection with. And luckily for me, that's not very hard to do. It usually happens quite quickly. And the moment that I see that person, I feel like they are the one. I have to marry them. So to resemble this first part, which I think is the absolute purity of love, and this is what makes me attracted in the first part, this is the innocence, I feel like I cannot live without this person. And it's really how I feel whenever I meet the right person. But I can't get away from them. They can't stop occupying my thought. And to resemble this, I'm going to continue off with one of Tchaikovsky's seasons. And this is the very first season that he wrote, January. And whenever I hear this, I always think of the most relaxing, comfortable place I can think of. And for me, that's at my family's house. The nickname is always by the fireplace. So I think of this fire-like image where I'm roasting marshmallows, playing a game of Monopoly with my cousins, and it's just everything feels absolutely fantastic, and like nothing can be spoiled. There's not a care or worry in the world. So this is January. So now to move on with the journey. After my own feelings, I feel like another important part is the actual relationship. And before it all goes to hell, which it will, there is some good. And this good part is represented with one of my favorite discoveries over the last several years. I was always that weird kid that would only listen to classical music for basically my entire childhood. And then once in a blue moon, I would discover new bands, different genres of music. So it started out with discovering jazz. And then after a while, I would get into different rock bands. And I'd be so excited. I would come home to my parents. I'd be like, Mom, Dad, I just discovered this amazing band. They're called the Beatles. You ever heard of them? They have to look me in the eye and say, yes, honey, of course we know the Beatles. Mom, Dad, there's an amazing band, Queen. You know them? Yeah, I was listening to them, way before you were born. But on this special occasion, it was Led Zeppelin that really took me by surprise. And there was one song in particular that I thought honestly became my all-time favorite song, I think. I used to listen to this before I would go to bed and fall asleep. And this is Stairway to Heaven. So this is my own little rendition and spin-off of Stairway to Heaven. All right, now the wreckage has come. So now this is the heartbreak. This is the end of the relationship. This is all of the chaos, all of the fighting. It was inevitable. I can never say that word. And it was meant to be. It was meant to happen. And I cannot think of a better piece to portray that than one of my all-time favorites. This is Liszt's Fourth Transcendental Etude, Mazeppa. And it has a very interesting story behind it. But basically, Mazeppa was having an affair with the Count's wife. And the Count finds out about this, and he ties Mazeppa to a horse naked. And the horse basically drags him until his eventual death and demise. But at the last second plot twist, he does not die. He actually rises up and becomes the ruler of his area. So it is full of heroism. It is full of heroism. Now, this is what talking has me do. Gets me tripped up. But whatever you call it, it is full of really everything. It has blood, sweat, and tears. It is one of my favorites to play. So this is Liszt Mazeppa. So I think now enough blood has been spilled, and we can move on to my personal favorite part, which is the working on yourself and working on being comfortable with yourself. And unfortunately, this is the part that I'm up to right now in my stage of life. So I can't say it's quite working, but I can say I'm trying. So the next two pieces, I'm actually going to go from one to the next straight into each other. And both of these, I think, are some of the most reflective pieces of music that I've ever worked on. The first being one of Metner's fairy tales. And this is by the wonderful Russian composer Nikolai Metner, who I always describe as kind of a hybrid cross between, I think, between Scriabin and Rachmaninoff. It's almost as if they had a son. Just the most gorgeous melodies. And this particular Metner, you know, it's one of the fairy tales. So when I think of fairy tale, I think a lot of people think of like a Cinderella story, a very lighthearted, happy tale. But this one has a much more dark undertone. And I think that is really complemented by this bell sound. And you're going to hear the way that the piece ends is with this haunting B-flat, very low octave bell ring. And I'm actually going to go straight into the next piece, which is one of Liszt's later transcendental etudes. This is his 11th, titled Harmonies du Soir. And this depicts melting harmonies. It is really, it's like a fondue pot of all of the harmonies and melodies all colliding with one another, combining into one. I'm a huge cheese fan, so that's why I bring up the melting pot. But it is one of my favorites to play. And I do have to say, whenever I hear that piece, I always think of what happened before the Big Bang. I think of during the dinosaur era, you know, then something happened. We don't know what it is. It's almost the universe creating itself. And it's actually, it's interesting because the Metner is going to end with these low bell sounds, and the Liszt begins with also these low bell sounds. So it's kind of combining into one. So this is Metner's fairy tale and Liszt's 11th transcendental etude. All right, I've got one last final piece. I really hope I'm not going too overboard. I was told to keep an eye on time. I'm not doing a very good job of that. But to close everything off, this is my own new life now. I'm independent, I'm free, and I'm thriving. I would announce this piece, but I think you all know it already.